Julia worked as if the world were ending tomorrow. The dark circles under her eyes told a story that no makeup could hide. No matter how fast she ran, no matter how much overtime she worked, money seemed to have a will of its own to run away from her. It entered her account on Thursday, and by Monday it had turned to dust. At 42 years old, the fear of having built nothing, of being just a replaceable part in the corporate machine, grew inside her like a cold, heavy shadow. She felt like she was trapped on a treadmill, set to maximum speed, running, sweating, despairing, but going nowhere. What Julia didn't imagine is that the key to turning off this treadmill wouldn't be winning the lottery, nor being promoted to director. The key would be a simple lesson, learned late one afternoon at her front gate. A lesson about seeds and butterflies that would change forever. Not just her bank balance, but the way she saw her own life. Get ready to hear the story of how Julia stopped being an exhausted hunter to become the owner of her own garden. Julia lived in a middle-class neighborhood, the kind where appearances matter a lot. Her apartment was beautiful, with a gourmet balcony and porcelain floors. But the walls of that apartment hid a suffocating secret. Julia's life looked like a perfect commercial to outsiders. But on the inside, it was a financial horror movie. Since she was young, she learned that being someone meant owning things. She started early in the corporate world. She was competent, agile, dedicated. She climbed the ladder fast, but for every step up in salary, she climbed 2 steps up in expenses. Now, as a sales supervisor, pressure was her daily companion. The freezing office air conditioning, the phone that wouldn't stop ringing, and the absurd targets at the end of the month. She spent 10, sometimes 12 hours a day solving other people's problems, swallowing pride with clients, smiling when she wanted to cry, selling her own health in monthly installments. The money coming in was high, but it was already spoken for. Before it even hit her account, it had an owner. It was the payment for the silver SUV in the garage, bought to show she had made it. It was the private school for the kids, costing a fortune, paid out of guilt. Guilt for not having time to be with them. It was the expensive Friday dinners ordered on apps, because she arrived home so exhausted she couldn't face the stove. She organized herself, made colorful spreadsheets on the computer, tried to juggle credit card due dates. But it felt like the month always had too many days for too little money. It was like trying to hold water with her hands. The tighter she squeezed, the more it leaked. She kept asking herself where she was going wrong. She wasn't throwing money away. She worked harder than everyone else. She was the first to arrive. So why was the feeling of failure so constant? Often, stuck in traffic, driving home in her comfortable car, Julia looked at other cars and thought, is everyone pretending just like me, or am I the only one who doesn't know how to live? The worst moment was Sunday night, when the Sunday evening blues hit, her stomach tied in a knot. The anxiety of Monday morning knocked on the door like a debt collector. Julia sat on her expensive leather sofa, but felt no comfort. She stared at the fancy ceiling, doing mental calculations. She remembered the designer blouse she bought because she deserved it, now sitting with the tag on. She remembered the balcony renovation that cost double the budget. She remembered the car insurance renewal was coming, and she had no savings. Adding it all up, she realized she worked to sustain a lifestyle that served only to impress people she didn't even like. But this clarity came too late, when the credit card bill was already closed. In many months, she had to use her overdraft protection. Seeing that red balance on the banking app was a stab to her pride. A grown woman, a boss at work, living at the mercy of the bank. Julia felt a silent revolt, a desire to scream. She wanted at least once to feel that the money was hers, that she was working to build a future, not to pay for the past. It was on a grey Tuesday, a day off, that Julia's life began to change. She was on the balcony with a cup of coffee, trying to ignore a headache, when she saw her neighbor across the street, Sophia. Sophia had lived on the street as long as Julia. They were the same age. But Sophia's life seemed to operate on a different frequency. Sophia was in her front garden, tending to a rose bush. She wore simple clothes, an old comfortable t-shirt, and she was smiling. There was no imported car in her garage. Her car was a standard model, 5 years old. Her house didn't have a gourmet balcony. It was a common house. But there was a peace around Sophia that Julia desperately envied. Sophia saw Julia on the balcony and waved. "Good morning, neighbor, resting?" Julia went down to say hello. She needed to talk to someone. Getting close to the fence, Sophia noticed. She noticed Julia's tense shoulders. She noticed the look of someone who hadn't slept well in months. "Julia, my dear, what weighs heavier today? The bank account or the conscience?" Sophia's question was a shot to the chest, direct, no filters. Julia tried to give that social smile to say, "Everything is great." But the dam broke. Tears came before words. And there at the gate, Julia let it all out. She spoke of the salary that vanished, the shame of debt, the fear of being fired and losing everything. She said she felt like a fraud. "I earn good money, Sophia. Why am I always broke?" When she finished, Julia expected judgment, or generic advice like, "Stop buying coffee." But Sophia wiped her dirty hands on a cloth and looked into her neighbor's eyes. "I know how it feels, Julia. I used to be you. I once had the car of the year and the insomnia of the year too." And then Sophia spoke about the rule that changed her life. "Julia, your problem is that you suffer from the hunter syndrome." Julia frowned. "Hunter?" Sophia explained calmly. "The hunter goes out every day to kill a lion. He kills it, brings it home, and makes a feast. He eats everything, the meat, the skin, the bones. He stuffs himself. But the next day he wakes up hungry again, and he is forced to go out and hunt again, whether he is sick or not. You are an excellent hunter, Julia. You bring home huge lions every month. But you eat the whole lion in 30 days. You save nothing. You eat the seeds that are inside the fruit." Julia looked at her neighbor's hands dirty with soil. "And what is the alternative, Sophia?" "Be a gardener," Sophia replied. "The gardener, when she receives the fruit, she never eats it all. The first thing she does, before taking the first bite, is to remove the seeds. Because she knows that if she eats the seed, the pleasure lasts a second. But if she plants the seed becomes a tree, and the tree gives fruit forever, without her needing to chase it." Sophia pointed to her own simple house. "I live on less than I earn, Julia. Do I look poor to the neighbors? Maybe, but I am free. My trees already pay my bills. If I get fired tomorrow, I'll just tend to my flowers. And you? If you stop running today, how long do you survive?" That question echoed in the empty street. How long do you survive? Julia knew the answer. 15 days, maybe 20. She felt a chill down her spine. She didn't own her life. She was a slave to her own lifestyle. Sophia noticed the impact and was gentle. "Start today, Julia. You don't need to sell the house today, but stop eating the seeds. Every time money touches your hand, take a piece, even if it's small, and plant it. Hide it from yourself. Pretend you earn less." Julia went back home stunned. It sounded too simple. "Will setting aside a little bit every month save me from this huge hole?" Doubt screamed, but the pain of continuing to live that way screamed louder. That night, Julia did something she hadn't done in years. She sat at the kitchen table, opened her bank statement, and faced the monster head-on. At that kitchen table, under the yellow light of the chandelier, Julia faced her demons. She started listing where every cent went, and the discovery was brutal. She discovered she worked 4 days a month just to pay for gas and insurance for the luxury car. She found out she spent almost $300 on gourmet coffees and business lunches, just to keep up appearances in front of colleagues, streaming subscriptions no one watched, the expensive gym she never went to. Julia realized her bucket didn't just have holes, it had no bottom. She felt a bitter taste in her mouth, the taste of time thrown in the trash. But knowing the truth is only half the journey. The other half requires courage. The following weekend, Julia called her husband and kids to the living room. It wasn't an easy conversation. The atmosphere was heavy. When she said they needed to cut luxuries, the revolt was immediate. Her oldest son complained about his allowance. Her husband questioned if she was exaggerating. "We work so hard, Julia. Are we going to live like we're poor now?" Julia took a deep breath, held her husband's hand, and said the phrase Sophia had taught her. "We are not going to live like we are poor. We are going to live like free people." Today we look rich, but we are slaves to next month's bill. And then began the most painful phase of all, the pruning. Julia listed the luxury car for sale, that silver SUV she loved so much. The day she handed the key to the new owner, she felt a pang in her heart. It was her symbol of success driving away. Her ego was screaming. Instead of the SUV, she bought an economy car used, 5 years older. The seats weren't leather. The engine made a funny noise. When she arrived at work with the new car, the stares came. In the office hallway, she heard 2 colleagues whispering, "Did you see Julia's car? Did her husband go bankrupt? Poor thing." That burned like fire. Julia's instinct was to explain, to justify herself, to say she had money, that it was a strategy. But she swallowed hard, remembered Sophia's peace, and kept walking. She was trading applause for freedom, and applause doesn't pay bills. The first month was one of withdrawal. Julia missed buying clothes online when she was sad. She missed ordering pizza on Tuesday out of laziness. She had to relearn how to cook, to bring lunch to work, to say no to friends. Many times she thought about giving up. Why all this effort, she thought. But then came the 30th, the day of truth. Julia sat in front of the computer to pay bills, tense as always. She paid the electricity, paid the water, paid the school, paid the condo fees. And when she finished, she looked at the balance. Usually by now, the balance would be negative. But there, blinking on the screen, was a positive number. $500. Julia stared at the screen for a full minute. She refreshed the page to see if it wasn't an error. It wasn't an error. It was the money from the car payment she sold. It was the money from the dinners she didn't order. For the first time in 15 years, real money was left over. Her hand trembled as she grabbed the mouse. Sophia had taught, "Don't leave the seed on the table or you'll eat it." Immediately, Julia transferred the money to a brokerage and bought her first asset. It doesn't matter what she bought. It matters what she felt. Clicking confirm, Julia felt a 100-pound weight lift off her back. That night, she slept without pills. The silence in the bedroom had never felt so good. Months passed. Julia became an obsessive gardener. Every dollar saved was a seed. The year-end bonus, seed. The tax refund, seed. She started studying investing. She learned how to make money work. The garden started to grow, small, shy, but green. But life loves to test those who decide to change. 6 months after the journey began, the phone rang on a Wednesday afternoon. It was her husband. His voice was trembling. The apartment's plumbing had burst. It leaked into the neighbor below. The damage was big. The repair estimate, $2,000 up front. In the past, at this moment, Julia would have had a panic attack. She would have fought with her husband, cried in the bathroom, called the bank begging for credit. That unexpected event would be the end of the world. But this time, Julia took a deep breath. She felt the adrenaline rise, but she didn't feel fear. She opened her investment app. Her peace fund was there. She had saved $3,000 in those 6 months of simple living. She withdrew the money, transferred it to her husband. "Pay it, love. Handle it." She hung up the phone and kept working. 5 minutes later, it hit her. She had just solved a serious $2,000 problem in 30 seconds. Without debt, without humiliation, and without losing her peace. Julia leaned back in her office chair and smiled to herself. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of being rich. Wealth isn't having a Gucci bag. Wealth is having a problem and being able to say, "I got this." Wealth is the dignity of not needing favors. The old car in the garage didn't matter anymore. The colleagues' gossip didn't matter anymore. Because Julia had something they didn't have. She had the shield of the garden. But Julia's journey was far from over. She had learned to plant. Now she needed to learn to wait for the harvest. Because planting is work, but watching the plant grow requires patience. And time would be the greatest ally, and also the greatest enemy of Julia's anxiety. 5 years passed since Julia put the first coin in the jar. If you met Julia on the street today, you might not notice a difference. She isn't driving a Ferrari. She doesn't live in a mansion. Her clothes are discreet. Her car is still that economy model, well kept. But if you look into her eyes, you will see that the exhausted woman has disappeared. The garden has grown. Those shy seeds became solid trees. The dividends and interest landing in her account every month already pay the rent and groceries. This gave Julia the greatest power a human being can have in capitalism. The power to say no. Recently, the company went through another crisis. The boss, nervous, started threatening everyone. "Whoever doesn't work overtime today can stop by HR tomorrow," he yelled. Julia's colleagues, in debt up to their necks, lowered their heads and obeyed in fear. But Julia looked at her watch. It was 6 p.m. She remembered she had promised to watch her son's soccer game. She stood up calmly, grabbed her bag and said, "Boss, my shift is over. See you tomorrow." The office stopped. Everyone expected her to be fired. But the boss did nothing. He knew she was good. And deep down, he felt respect for someone who has no fear. Julia walked out the front door feeling the wind on her face. She wasn't fired. On the contrary, because she works without desperation, she produces better. The butterflies now fly after her. The story of Julia and Sophia is not a fairy tale about getting rich quick. It is about stopping digging your own grave and starting to build your own ladder. Maybe right now you are feeling like the Julia from the beginning. Tired, no time, feeling like you work only to make the bank richer. The system wants you to stay like this. The system loves desperate hunters, because those who are desperate accept any salary and pay any interest rate. But now you know the truth. The veil has fallen. You have two options when closing this video. The first is to ignore everything. Keep waking up tomorrow to hunt, eat the seed, and repeat, until the day the body can no longer run. The second option is to pick up the shovel. Start your pruning today. Sell what needs to be sold. Cancel the useless. Rescue the first seeds from your salary, even if it is $20. Will it hurt? Yes. The beginning of planting is lonely. The neighbors will talk. The ego will complain. But 5 years from now, you will look back and thank yourself of today. The choice is yours. Do you want to be a tired hunter or a free gardener? If you decided to start your planting today, I want to know who you are. Write here in the comments the phrase that will mark the beginning of your freedom. I choose the garden. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here we don't chase butterflies. We tend the soil. A big hug, happy planting, and see you next time.